Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bloom the Podcast. This is episode 36. We are so happy that our bloomers are back and joining us. We are super happy for another episode of Bloom the Podcast. Hope you guys are all ready. Strap your seatbelts because we're going to get into it. If you guys are new here, my name is Donovan. I'm your host, and I'm here with the one and only co-host, Ashley.
What's up?
Yeah, and we are back. If you guys are new here, this is the realest Christian talk show that is on the internet. I promise you that. It goes down over here. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so that way you guys can follow for all our future episodes and check out all our older episodes. But starting out for this episode, I don't know if you're prepared for this, but the Bloom Moment of the Week.
Yes.
That's our newest segment, guys. Bloom Moment of the Week. And on this segment, me and Ashley will be telling you guys a little bit about what we're learning and, you know, what the Lord is showing us. It can be really anything. It can be about life. It can be about Bible. It can be about anything. This is just a segment where we want to talk about the growth we're seeing in our own lives and, you know, just how the Lord is helping us become bloomers. So I don't know if you want to start or should I?
You can start.
I'll start. Okay. I would say right now, I know I said contentment on last week, but kind of piggybacking off that, I would say patience. I rush a lot. And I'm seeing a lot in my life. I have all these things that I want to do and things that I want to see happen in my life. But it's just about waiting on the Lord, being patient. Because his timing is perfect and our timing isn't. And most of the time when we think we need something or we think we want something, that's usually not the thing that we need. So just realizing that the Lord has a plan for our lives and that everything's going to happen when it's supposed to happen. And even more on a practical level, we're never late to our own success or our own story or our own achievements. Everyone has a different path. Everyone has different, roads that they take in life. And whether you don't have something by a certain age that you think you should have, that doesn't matter. You'll get there when you get there. And when you get there, that'll be exactly when the Lord wanted you to be there. So that's just kind of something I've been going over a lot in my head as I'm heading into the new year and just trying to make sure I have that frame of mind with all the goals that I'm trying to achieve. So I'll pass that to you.
Yeah. So something that's just been kind of like called to my attention is, so as I've talked about it before, but like Bible time and all that stuff and how I'm setting new goals, whatever. But my big thing lately has just been really like studying the Bible. Like I feel like I've noticed for myself that I make Bible time a priority now and I do my Bible time, but I don't like really like get into it. Like I've been kind of like in a dry spot. See, this is real talk. I've been like in a dry spot, you know, like I just feel like I could be so much closer to the Lord than I am right now. And so that's kind of, I'm like really happy that I am thinking about that.
That you're aware of it.
Yeah. Like I'm happy that that's been brought to my attention and that it's actually something that like weighs on my heart instead of me being like, well, I don't really care. Like I just, you know, I'm in a dry spot, you know?
Yeah.
So it's been like eye-opening that it's just like, it's like really like refreshing, I feel like, to be like, okay, like I can like see my faults clearly and that's just like a sign that like I want to please the Lord and that like I need to do these things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The desire's there, the Lord, and it's always going to be on us to continue to put in the work, but ultimately the Lord is the one that grows that. That's sanctification, and that's a beautiful thing when you see the Lord really starting to do that in your heart. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the Bloom Moment of the Week, guys. Make sure you guys comment down below if you guys have anything in particular that you guys are learning this week or anything that's been weighing on your heart, something that the Lord's put on you. Drop that in the comments. We would love to see where you guys are growing because you guys are part of the Bloom family and we're all growing together. We're all in the race together. So drop down below what the Bloom Moment of the Week was for you. And maybe we'll start reading these out so that way we can kind of
that'd be cool.
like, you know, get the input going, get the conversation going, because that's really what the show is about.
No names, don't worry.
Yeah, we can keep it anonymous unless you want your name on there. I mean, you know, we are all about
unless you want to become famous, you know.
Yeah, get you on the podcast. Anyways, jumping right into today's episode, we got a good one today. And I think it's something that's much needed, especially in a time like this where everything is very hostile. It's all hostile. Today we're going to be talking about Christian criticism or Christian confrontation. And this is something that has a couple different extremes to it. And we're going to talk about both of those extremes. And we're going to talk about really the biblical aspects of this and what this should really look like in believers' lives. And we'll say this off the bat. We're coming from our convictions and what we believe to be true about the Bible. So we'll be going from the Bible, as always. So feel free to drop in the comments as well, what you guys think about this topic. But jumping right into it, Christian criticism or Christian reproofing, right? As Christians, we are called to do that. If we see a brother or a sister who is in sin, we are called, it is our duty to be fervently loving our brothers and sisters. And
gosh, sexist.
A woman. No,
no! End the podcast.
No, I didn't mean that. That's a joke. No. So confronting brothers and sisters when we see sin in their lives. And I think you have it on your phone. I actually can't use my phone because that's where you're looking at our pretty faces on.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So Matthew 18, that's where we're going to be pulling this from. And Matthew 18 has a couple different sections that we're going to be talking about. And one is the steps in which you take to confront your brothers and sisters. So actually, before I read this, and I'll just keep this open because you have a passcode, but what do you see in the church when it comes to Christians confronting each other about sin in their lives? What would you say you've seen in your experience, what you felt called upon your heart to do as far as confronting other people? And you don't obviously have to tell people's, things on here, but, just give some examples of things you've seen, things you've done.
So things I've seen has been quite interesting. My experience has been mostly seeing Christians confronting people on things that they shouldn't be confronting people on. Things that are not sin, that are really just a personal preference. And I see these Christians banding together to confront people on these things when there's actual sin going on in the church and they're ignoring it. That's been what I've seen. And it's so frustrating to see that, because it's there's so much we could be fixing, but they're focusing on something that literally really has nothing to do with them or has no meaning, it's not against God and it's not against them, but I feel like Christians just can't let go of their own personal thoughts, they're well, I think that I would do that differently, so I'm gonna confront them about it, you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what I've seen. As far as confronting people has gone for me, I feel like it's really easy to, I don't know, assume or maybe accuse someone of doing something instead of maybe talking to them and having that conversation before you say, hey, well, after this conversation and kind of hearing what your own thoughts and what you've said and your direct message, I think that in the Bible it says this and that, I feel like us Christians miss that a lot. We just go to people and hey, so did you know that you're totally suck right now? You know what I'm saying? You're really failing at if you want to know.
Yeah.
So
you're shaking hands with the devil.
Yeah. That's kind of, it's even something for me to work on, I feel like I'm the type of person who's no, that person's just evil, we need to instead of being hey, I should probably hear their side of the story before I confront them. Obviously we can't be dumb and be nothing's going on there when it's a constant pattern and you've seen it multiple times. But I just feel like Christians can easily jump to conclusions without having facts first.
Right. Yes. I would second a lot of that. What you first said, people confronting people on their personal convictions and their personal preferences rather than biblical issues. And that stems from people's conscience. Everyone's conscience is different and everyone's conscience is informed differently. And that's an important thing to note. People operate on what they believe to be true, what they believe to be right. And that's a good thing. The problem is you can't necessarily always project that if it's not directly noted in scripture.
Yeah.
if you're not going to, give biblical backing to why you are saying what you're saying, it's not best practice to start going up to people and telling them how you feel about things. Because how we feel usually is not what we want to be basing our decisions off of. It's not good. And like you said, they were banding together about things. And that kind of goes with Matthew 18, which kind of goes through the steps of how you should be confronting people. So they may be going through the proper steps, but maybe about the wrong issues, choosing the wrong hills to die on. Because in Matthew 18, in verse 15, it says, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. So that's a one-on-one interaction. Then it continues to say, if he listens to you, you have gained a brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others. So maybe someone else that's seen this pattern in this person's life and can say, yeah, I think that's unbiblical. Then take that person and go to him and kind of, see what he says. That every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church, bringing it to the attention of the congregation. Because if someone is refusing to acknowledge sin in their life, that's not a very good sign of where they're at spiritually. Right. I think that's the best way to tell where someone is really at in their walk with the Lord, is how they can take criticism to their walk with the Lord. Or not necessarily criticism, but loving brothers and sisters coming alongside to say, hey, I see this in you. Yeah. You have to be able to take that. Right.
And I think a big part of that is respecting those Christians around you. Right. And I've seen this, where there's believers in the church who have these issues, and you can't necessarily take what they're saying to you as, don't want to say serious, 'cause it's not a joke, but you can't take in what they're saying because you don't respect them. And I don't know how to describe that without making it sound like a respect thing. But
it's hitting the mic here. I get what you're saying, because if someone doesn't have necessarily the best reputation or track record, quote unquote, which is kind of a whole nother topic in itself, because and that's something we were going to talk about too, is like believing the best about people, which it can be difficult to do, especially when it comes to confronting sin. Right. And that's why I guess the 2 or 3 witnesses is really, if they don't respond to you one-on-one, is where the rubber meets the road there. But like it continues to say here, if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be as a Gentile and tax collector. Like, you're basically like saying this person is not walking with the Lord. It's church discipline. That's basically what that is. Yeah. So with that being said, it's very important when you're coming to your brothers and sisters that you have not only affirmed what you're going to say to them about what they're doing in their life, but you're coming at it with the loving intention. I think that's the biggest thing, is the intention of why you're going there. Because I feel like a lot of times us as Christians, we're very trigger happy on trying to point out other people's flaws. And I can't remember the reference, but it talks about, someone has a speck in their eye and you're pointing that out, but you have a log sticking out of your own. Right. We come at everything in life a lot of times with that mindset. And that's where it's really important to look at yourself first before you go to someone else, but also just your intentions. Are you trying to just point something out in their life, or do you actually want to see them grow? So that's a big, distinction that needs to be made.
And that kind of comes into like what I was saying again, like not even just respect, but like knowing that person really does truly care about you and your walk with God. That's the sad part, is it's so hard to like know that in the Christian world, because so many Christians can just be really unloving, to their brothers and sisters. So it's really hard sometimes to like take that in. But like you said, like, I feel like if we're going to confront someone, then we need to make sure that person knows that like we truly like love them, and I feel like that should be a goal.
What are some good ways that we can put that into practice though, and making sure we come across that way?
I think it starts from the beginning. Like, from when you meet that person. There should be no reason as believers as to why they shouldn't feel that way. And then all of a sudden when you're confronting them, you're like, I love you. You know, like there should be no
By
reason.
the way, love you, bro.
Yeah, like that shouldn't be a thing. And it's not like some random stranger is going to come up and confront you. Like, I don't know you, but hey. So that really says something if you know the person and that person has felt no love from you whatsoever and you're confronting them all of a sudden. So I really do think it comes from the beginning of how you treat people in general when you meet them and when you talk to them and welcoming them in as like your brother and sister. Like you have that relationship because of Christ.
Yes. And also to go on top of that, kind of what you were getting at before as well, is what standing do you have in this person's life? Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, theoretically and practically speaking, any Christian can go to any Christian and say, I see this in you.
Right.
But what would be a lot more tactful and a lot more appreciated and a lot more, I think, wise, in my opinion, would to be if you really have a relationship with this person, you would be the one to do that. Mm-hmm. Because if you're claiming to be close with this person, you're claiming to love this person and have a good relationship with this person, that should be something that you're doing. It shouldn't be some random person that doesn't really know you at all coming into your life being like, say, hey, we need to talk about this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a really important thing. And that's one thing I've seen a lot as well. I've had a couple different experiences where someone that I legit have never talked to a day in my life, I have not even introduced myself. I have not said hi. I've never even given him one of these. Never even
the black
did.
Guy nod?
Yeah. I've never even did the minority head nod. I've never done that. And they've come up to me and said, and tried to check me on something. And I was like,
oh yeah.
Like, you're talking to me?
Yes.
Like I had to do one of these.
Who were you?
Are you talking to me? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And not that that's necessarily a sinful thing to do, but it's not very smart and it's not very wise. And I can guarantee you're not going to get a very good reaction, because I can say from firsthand experience, my reaction was like, excuse you, which is somewhat prideful on me. But also, like I said, it's not the smart. You're not.
Like, what do they know? Exactly.
Right. So making sure you have a good relationship with people, or even a relationship at that. It doesn't even have to be like some boon coon best friends from birth friendship, but at least some standing with the person.
I think when me and Nikki were dating, so many people wanted to tell him about me, even though they didn't know me whatsoever. I was like, where did you get this information? Because, you know, me and you aren't talking like that, you know, like people really do be trying to like talk about you as a person without knowing you whatsoever. It's crazy.
It's wild. And, you know, I think that it's hard to say like, yeah, you can't do that, but it's just like, be wise, use common sense and use common courtesy. Because,
and think if it was the other way around. Like, how would you feel if someone did that to you? I don't think people think about that enough.
They're so unaware. And people aren't present in their current surroundings. They're just like, a thought comes to their brain and they're like, oh, I'm doing that thing. It's like, run that through a common sense filter.
How about you pray about it first?
That's something our old pastor used to say, and that's just kind of a principle when it comes to confronting people. Mm-hmm. If you are actively thinking about wanting to confront them, don't do it.
Yeah.
Confronting people usually comes from a place of, man, this is going to be really, really hard to bring up, and I don't want to have to do this.
When you're dreading it the most, that's when you know you need.
Yeah, but that's where the love really shows. Because like, man, I love this person so much that I'm going to tell them about this thing, even though it literally pains my soul to have this conversation with you. I'm going to bring this up.
Yeah, I know. Every time I've talked to mom and dad, I'd be like, I'm going to confront that person. Like, and I'm talking, they're like, you're not ready.
Yeah, you're in the shower rehearsing your freestyle of what you're going to say.
I'm like, what I'm going to say if they get in my face.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to fight.
That's how you know you're in the wrong frame of mind. And I feel like a lot of Christians don't wait. They don't pray. And I'm preaching to myself included. Everything we say on here, guys, we're preaching to ourselves as well. Right. We're just trying to grow. But we've been in those situations. Everyone's been there. We're like, yeah, when I see him next, he's going to hear it.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute.
Like, you want them to say something bad to you.
I wish you would. Yeah, that's just such a terrible, quite honestly, sinful place to be coming from. Because that's just tearing down. That's not building up. It's just everything negative. And as Christians, we want to be pushing the complete opposite of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So and I guess that kind of brings me to this kind of qualifying statement about this kind of half of the argument. Narrowing down what is sin and what isn't. You know what I'm saying? Because yes,
the Bible
that's where everything
tells you so.
That's what everything comes back to.
Right.
And I think if we can narrow that down, we'll kind of cut down on a lot of the rigmarole and back and forth that you see that causes all this disunity in the church. You know, it's just people can't, and a lot of people don't know their word enough to be like, yeah, this is sin, which causes a lot of problems.
Right.
And
some people do know what is and what isn't sin, but they're still like so persistent. Me and Nikki had someone tell us that for a fact we were not in sin, right?
Yeah.
But then on the day of our wedding, this person asked us not to get married for this, and that reason, even though that person specifically said that we were not in sin. Like, people just, they can't let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the motive again comes into play, because if that's how they're feeling about it, I know then that's not coming from a place of, and I don't want to be a person that's like judging people's intentions and heart motives, because obviously you never really know what people are thinking, but their actions are always going to speak louder than their words.
Right.
And if you can persistently see someone coming at you and they're not following Matthew 18, it's a pretty clear indicator of where they're coming from. Because are they saying you are in sin? And then if you don't listen, they're bringing a couple other people saying, yeah, you're in sin. And everyone can agree that you're in sin. If they can't take what you're doing to the church, like, what do you have? Mm-hmm. So I think narrowing that down is so important. And that's what kind of transitions us into the other half, which is people kind of going off their conscience. Mm-hmm. And that's always difficult because, like we've said, you can't judge people's motives. And a lot of people give excuses for why they do what they do. So even when you confront someone about things, or people are confronting you, it's a lot of, how should I say? Like, it's a lot of times it just feels off. Mm-hmm. And I think that partially is because of us, and we are very prideful. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to flip it back on us here. How can we as Christians be better receivers of biblical criticism in our lives?
I think just thinking about life as a constant growing experience. And so anytime someone comes to you with something, it's just another way that you can grow and be better, you know?
Yeah.
Not like, oh, this is tearing down my person, but like, oh, this is something I can do to improve my life or myself or my walk with the Lord, you know?
Yeah.
And I think just lowering yourself, you know?
There's so much of that's needed right now, guys, I swear.
Right. Like, you are not some like like, we act as if we're God and we don't need help, you know, like we don't need any reproof, like we're chilling, you know, and that's never the case because we're constantly sinning. So when someone comes to you, it shouldn't be a surprise as to like, what, I sinned? Don't at me, you know, like you're constantly sinning. So I feel like that should be something where like, oh, this person saw something and I shouldn't be so hard-headed as to think I didn't do it because my nature is just to do those things. Right. So I should know for a fact that like, I probably did do something, you know? So
I would like to piggyback off that as well. And like you said, lowering yourself, that's obviously super important. Seeing everything as a growing experience and almost in a sense wanting it. Because if you're really serious about growing your walk with the Lord, if I'm doing something that I don't know about, that is keeping me from growing and keeping me from getting closer to God.
Right.
Wouldn't I want to know about that?
Right. Exactly.
So I think
it's like if your parents never gave you any discipline or like TED Talks, like literally
TED Talks.
TED Talks. If they never talked to you about anything, like we all have had that talk with our parents where like, you need to change your attitude, boy. You know what I'm saying? Like if we never got that, we'd just literally be the devil. So like think about it as the same way.
They never got those talks.
Right. And like, well, just like think about it as that, you know, your parents are your brothers and sisters in Christ, hopefully. And so it's the same when another brother and sister in Christ comes to you and is like, hey, your attitude or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. We should be wanting to know how we can grow and how we can be closer with the Lord. And, having those relationships and building those relationships with people that really want to see that for us, I think is important as well. Mm-hmm. And because when that happens and when people come to you, you know why they're there and what their heart motive is. And that's always encouraging, because then it can become a learning moment and there's no hostility there. And everything is just, much more edifying.
Right.
So that's what I would say in that regard. But I mean, I guess we'll save that for another time, because I was going to bring something else up. But I guess you guys are going to have to wait on that.
Too much juice for one episode.
Too much juice for one episode. But that will conclude our topic for today. But we're not done yet. If you guys stayed for the first episode of 2021, we got a new segment on the show. And that is Table Talk with the Bloomers. That's y'all, if you didn't know. Table Talk with the Bloomers, we answer your questions. Now, I forgot to do this, so my apologies, but I forgot to put a poll on our Instagram page for you guys to submit your questions. But luckily, we did have 2 questions that came in that we're going to answer this week. So I'll actually make sure I put a poll out for next week's episode. But the 2 questions we got, we'll start with this one. What translation of the Bible do we use?
NASB.
Any reason in particular?
I just feel like it's easier to read.
To understand.
Yeah, some of them I'm like, I can't. It takes too much brain power to actually read what it's saying. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get that. I use the NASB too, and I think that's because I don't know if the John MacArthur Study Bible is in any other translations. I don't know if I'm just ignorant and didn't know that, but I wanted to get a John MacArthur Study Bible, and at the time I felt like that was the only one I could get it in. That might be different now.
No, because I think I have a John MacArthur and it's an NASB too.
Yeah. So that was the main reason I got it, because there's a lot of good notes, a lot of good things to help you study the word, and really, because if you don't know, if you haven't been to seminary or something, a lot of times you don't know the Greek translations and the meanings of certain words. So it's helpful to have the study Bible to kind of guide you along in certain passages. And the other question that we got was, what is a good amount of time to read the Bible when you're doing your devotions?
I think you kind of work up to a certain point. I feel like when you're really invested, that you spend a lot more time reading, obviously, and there'd be no reason to cut it down. If you're really enjoying your Bible time, you're not like, I gotta cut this down to 30. You're gonna spend as much time as you can, because that's what you should be doing, and that's what's good, right?
Right.
But I think if you're struggling to read or something, what I've done, or what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to at least make it a 30-minute, just because I think it's sometimes you just have to force it down, even if you're not wanting it.
Yeah.
You need that time, and reading it for 5 minutes is, obviously if you're getting it in the day and 5 minutes is all you can do, then good on you for getting it in, Mm-hmm. But I think that if you can, the more time, the better, just so you can really be thinking on it, not just words out,
Yeah. I like both of those answers. Those are good. I would say it's less about time, in my opinion. And I think I would encourage any Christian to read as long as they can. Mm-hmm. But I would say it's less about time and more about the quality. It's quality over quantity for me, especially if you're struggling. Because for me, I was struggling a lot at the end of the year, and I'm kind of getting out of that rut now. But when I'm struggling, I find that I can only read for a certain amount of time where my mind is fully 100% devoted to this reading.
It's like doing school.
Right. If I read for an hour, but I only got 15 minutes of that hour of actually really studying, then I would say 15 minutes. And then once you get to 15 minutes and you feel like I'm still enjoying this, then I would say continue and keep going until you feel like you're at a place where you can go for longer, until you get up to you're reading for an hour and a half and you're not even thinking about it because you're just invested in the word, like you said. Right. So I would think, stop thinking about it in a time frame and think about it from what are you getting out of it? Mm-hmm. Because that's ultimately what you what needs to happen. If you can get a really bomb Bible time in 10 minutes and you're just like invested and you've got a lot out of it, that's great. You don't have to be like, man, I only read for 10 minutes. It's not an hour. Am I any less holy? Because no, you're not. So I would say focus on really getting in intentional Bible reading, and then over time you'll see that time grow as you are intentional in your word. So thank you guys for submitting your questions. We appreciate it greatly. Like I said, I'll make sure to put a poll on our next episode. Make sure you guys subscribe for weekly uploads, and we will see you all on the next episode.